Z of zombies, life is a luxury. Scientists warn about virus from glacial defrost that could generate a new pandemic and turn the world into a nightmare. When consciousness, soul, and scruples have disappeared, humanity is on the brink of the abyss. It plunges society into moral chaos, and the streets are plagued with ruthless creatures. In the middle, two lonely souls cross in a dark alley, Lucia, a prostitute with tired eyes, a silhouette that lit your heart, and Alexander, a hardened man. Lucia, perceptive and ingenious, what brings you to my corner of the world? Are you looking for comfort? Alexander, looking around, yes, I can find comfort here, and for how long? Lucia, burning a cigarette and exhaling the smoke, therefore, and in cash, life is a game and there is no other choice. But, what anxious face, his eyes are filled with glow, and, tocando su rostro con ternura. It's a luxury. But maybe there's something else we can do here, in the shadows. Caressing the side. Something forbidden, even dangerous. Have you heard of the flower? Alexander, the flower. Lucia, smiling, the one who sells in the darkest places, where death is mixed with life. The poisonous petals, but also have the power to erase the pain. If you buy it, you can forget. Alexander, decided, where do we buy it? Lucia, he arises and approaches him, in the cemetery on the other side. That's where they sell. But be careful, Alexander. The flower has a price. Are you willing to pay? And so, where morality and love are a forbidden luxury, Lucia and Alexander go in search. In the shadows, you will discover that the real price of the flower is much higher than you imagined. The night overlooks the cemetery, and Lucia and Alexander advance among the ruined tombs. The air is filled with a fragrance between sweet and nauseous. The stars blink with contempt, as if they had lost hope. Lucia, supporting an oxidized lantern, here they sell the flower. But it's not as simple as asking and taking it to you. You have to pay in return. Alexander, looking at the bricks with deleted names, how much? Lucia, she kneels next to a tomb covered with moss where the seller is sitting. The flower has a price, for what you want to leave behind. Only then will he grant you his forgetfulness. Do you have enough to pay? Alexander, close your eyes and think, yes. I've got enough. And then let's have something in a coffee. Lucia, with solemnity, then pay it. There is the saleswoman sitting on the grave. Alexander takes a few notes out of his pocket and puts them carefully on the ground. The saleswoman smiling, with the last sun reflected in her eyes. Lucia, smiling, the flower is already paid. Now, take it. Alexander leaned and took the flower of the thin stem. The petals are black as the night, and when he touches them, he feels how his memory fades away, everything disappears. Lucia, taking the flower, forgetting is a gift and a curse. You will not know what you have lost, but you will not remember the pain. Are you ready? Alexander sits down, and Lucia puts the flower in her mouth. He feels a burning sensation in his tongue while chewing the poisonous petals. The world fades away around her, and the last image she sees is Lucia's face, grabbing in her eyes. When he wakes up, he's alone in the cemetery. Lucia has disappeared. The saleswoman, too, and her mind is empty. All that remains is a sense of loss and a deep void. Lucia reappears and approaches him with compassionate eyes. Lucia, welcome to oblivion, Alexander. Now we are equal. Lucia and Alexander cling to their new reality. The flower has paid its price, and you have lost a lot, now you must move on even without redemption. The city breathes and palps at the pace of its inhabitants. The streets, like intertwined veins, take life from one end to another. The first light of the day is filtered between the trees of the squares and the buildings. The birds sing their morning symphony, and the cafes open their doors, inviting the dawners. Colonial houses with roofs of red tiles are fitted with glass skyscrapers. Historic churches stand next to shiny shopping malls. The main avenue bubble of activity. Clothing stores, restaurants, bookstores, and fruit and vegetable markets are intertwined. The sellers offer their products, and the passers rush to their destinations. The Central Park, with its lake and trails, is an oasis for lovers. Children cheer in the squares, and dogs walk with their owners. The museum holds exhibitions that tell the history of the region, from the indigenous peoples to the colonial era. The theater and music nights in the cultural center are a balm for the soul. The corners hide small restaurants with tempting aromas. Here, the fusion with Italian cuisine gives rise to unique dishes. At dusk, the sun goes off, dyeing the sky with orange and pink tones. The lights of the lanterns are lit, and the couples walk hand in hand. In some corner, Lucia and Alexander cross again, and somehow their hearts burn. The cops rise like bastions against a zombie outbreak. The streets have been invaded by hungry and soulless creatures. Alexander, a veteran, and Lucia, a prostitute with scars on the heart, find themselves at a crossroads. The city, with its colonial houses, which already have its doors and windows with well-sealed grids, and the modern buildings of crystals that are already invaded, and the old churches, full of prayers and supplications, all roll at the edge of the abyss. Conscience, soul, and scruples have disappeared. The streets are full of wandering shadows, lifeless bodies wandering, looking for their next victim. Lucia and Alexander hold on to the decision to continue together, but they know that death is at the next corner. In the middle of chaos, an ancestral legend arises. It is said that in the depths of the city, under the foundations of centuries-old churches, lies an ancient evil. A dark being feeding on lost souls. The Knights, they call it. No one knows if it's real or just a story to scare children. But in desperate times, even the darkest legends come to life. Lucia and Alexander are dragged into an uncertain destiny. Together, they must confront the zombies, discover the truth behind night, and fight for survival where the line between life and death has been blurred. The army, scattered and exhausted, faces the hordes of non-living people on the streets of the city. The shots resumed, and the screams of the soldiers were mixed with the noises of the non-dead, and the smell of powder and shit was mixed up with smoke and sweat. Alexander, stained with blood and his eyes hardened by the battle, leads a load. Lucia, with her heart beating in her chest, continues closely. The streets are in complete chaos. The population flees desperately, pushing each other, stumbling and falling. Abandoned cars block the avenues, and burning buildings cast distorted shadows on the floor. Evacuation helicopters are rotating in the sky, their rotors cutting the air and their machine guns sparkling to protect people running towards them, shaking their arms, begging to be rescued. But the space is limited, and not everyone can be saved. Soldiers struggle to maintain a minimum of order, but desperation is contagious. Inconceivable. Lucy and Alexander are at a crossroads. Should they join the evacuation and seek refuge in the helicopters? Or should they stay and fight? But don't run, you'll face the circumstances. Night swarms in place, advancing with its palpable dark presence in the midst of chaos. In a short pause, in a narrow alley, Lucia takes Alexander's hand. Their eyes are found, and at that moment, they both know they're not going to run away. Not when something greater is at stake: hope, humanity, redemption. Together, they advance towards the line of fire. The bullets swing around them, and the zombies bend over them. But they don't step back. They cannot afford to forget why they are fighting. They can't afford to forget who they are. And so, in the middle of chaos, in a city on the edge of the abyss, Lucia and Alexander become hope. Their hearts blew at the same time, and a fierce determination burned in their eyes. Alexander, with his past marked by survival, seizes a weapon that has become an extension of his will, a rifle of cut cannon. The cold, worn metal fits perfectly into your hand, and the sour smell of powder blends with the sweat on your forehead. The short cannon is ideal for body-to-body combat. When the zombies rush over him, Alexander does not hesitate to press the trigger. Perdigons crush skulls, tear meat, and stop the undead in their advance. Every shot is a macabre flash of death. The end of the rifle is worn out by constant use. It has been its extension in all these clashes, from dark streets to ruined buildings. The closing of the chamber is their war music, and the retreat is their constant reminder that they are still alive. Lucia, beside her, carries a combat knife. Very sharp, and his tactical sheath shines with the promise of survival. It's not as effective as Alexander's rifle, but it's his last line of defense when Alexander recharges cartridges and despair ends. Together, they advance to the heart of chaos, their ready weapons and their hardened souls. In a world where the line between life and death has been blurred, the rifle and the combat knife are your most faithful allies. As empty helmets accumulate at your feet and hope grows like smoke in the air,